It's spring in Indiana, which means it's will be 70 degrees this morning, and we'll get 8 inches of snow tonight with a tornado in between.
Right, yeah, exactly. But it also means we're one step closer to the Indy 500.
That's true, although I can't talk about that yet because it's not May.
Okay.
It's still April.
Fair enough. My bad. We can cut that part out.
Yeah. That's what I'm told anyway. Not about the race, but that it's April. Seems like it's February 2nd over and over and over again. But maybe that's just because what's going on in the world continues to go on. Well, anyway, it's good stuff, though, mostly. I mean, a lot of craziness, but for those in manufacturing and distribution and in our world, it's good. Consumer products, things like that.
Things are still hopping, for sure. All right, well, welcome back to the Industrious podcast, everyone. We apologize for a little bit of a delay. We know you missed us, but it's time to get back on the horse. Spring break is over, as Joe said. In Indiana, it's not really spring break time. It's whatever spring means in Indiana, which means every other hour is different. This episode's guest, Mr. Chris Wallis, or maybe I should say Coach Chris Wallis. We'll get into that. Of the IMA, which is the Indiana Manufacturers Association, is joining us today. Welcome to the Industrious podcast.
Thanks. Appreciate you guys having me. Glad to be here.
Absolutely. Why don't you give our listeners and viewers a little background history on yourself?
Yeah, so I've kind of a lifelong resident of Indiana. I was born down in Evansville, down in southern Indiana. Okay. Moved up here when I was 3, though, so I've spent all my childhood and actually all my adult years in Indianapolis, doing the normal stuff that kids do, right, when they grow up. I mean, playing every sport there was to play, watching every sport there was to play, and right. If it didn't have to do with sports, I probably didn't have too much to do with it. So, after that, spent my high school years at Bishop Chatard.
We did? Okay.
Yep. Sure.
Another fellow side. Trojan?
Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely.
Go Trojans.
So we've all got something in common here. After that, went to IUPUI. So I graduated with a degree from the right school from Indiana University,
right.
not the other side. Not the other side. And then that kind of led me right into the work world. So I kind of got my start as a manufacturer's rep for years and years before brought me to the IMA.
What were you repping when you were doing that side of the house, I should say?
Yeah, I wasn't actually on the industrial side. I was in the apparel and sporting goods side.
Sure.
So I represented K-Swiss athletic footwear for years. Okay. Cutter and Buck, which is a golf apparel line.
Right.
Callaway apparel. So I've that's probably my fetish of staying around sports
sure.
kind of led me to those lines.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Cool.
Gotcha.
Now, were you doing that on your own, or were you doing it with a company that was?
I started out as part of a rep group. It was based out of Cleveland, and then I went out on my own after that. So.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yep.
So then, at what point did the IMA come into the world?
After I was a manufacturer's rep for quite a few years. I actually kind of transitioned there into the promotional products world. So I had just a small promotional products distributorship. It was a one-man show by choice. Mm-hmm. So I did that 13, 14 years. Actually still have that business on the side, but opportunity with the Indiana Manufacturers Association, presented itself, and it was just kind of time to do something a little bit different. I'd been around manufacturers my entire career.
Sure.
So it was kind of a natural fit for the IMA.
Yeah.
How long have you been there?
Coming up on 3 years.
Oh, okay. So somewhat recent.
Yes.
3 years. So in this day and age, 3 years meaning like 3 decades with COVID.
Exactly.
So I suspect then that you were selling promotional products to some of the manufacturers. And then perhaps, is that how you became aware of the IMA? Or it became aware of you?
Not necessarily. I mean, I had some manufacturers as clients. Actually, just for whatever reason, I happened to see it on LinkedIn and thought, this looks kind of interesting, and threw my hat in the ring and 3 years later, here we sit. So
Right.
Yeah, with a couple of buffoons recording you on a podcast. Congratulations.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly the way it's supposed to go, right?
Totally.
Moving on up like the Jeffersons. I guess tell us a little bit more about the IMA. What is the mission of the IMA?
So the Indiana Manufacturers Association, just in the simplest terms, we're the trade association within the state of Indiana for the manufacturing industry.
Okay.
So our mission is we are basically the voice of our members at the State House. So
Right.
we represent their interest on all matters of public policy. That's really kind of the overriding mission of what we do. You know, our members, you know, they're tied up day in and day out, just like you guys, running their own business.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have time to kind of follow what's going on, you know, within the legislature and all of that. So that's what we do on their behalf. We try to advocate for a real pro-business environment. We want to make it easier to do business in Indiana, promoting quality manufacturing jobs, that sort of thing.
Sure. So or maybe we do want to stir things up a little bit. What are the hot topics of the day?
Well, I'll tell you, you know, really for about the past, really since I started, the manufacturers that I talk to, number one on their hit list is workforce issues.
Yeah.
And it's really kind of 1A, 1B, and 1C. We've got a population problem.
Right. We can relate to that.
Exactly.
Yeah, we have a few job openings.
Do you?
Yeah, so if you could figure out the workforce thing by, meaning actually enriching it, adding just human capital, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
I think it's a combination of, hey, here's this opening. Not only we're getting a lot less applications for it than we used to,
Mm-hmm.
but then you get a resume and it's like one sentence on a piece of paper. I'm like, that's not really a resume. So that's a bit challenging as well.
Yeah. I can't think of the last manufacturer's facility that I've pulled up in the parking lot and there hasn't been huge sign out front, now hiring. So, I mean, the jobs are definitely there for people that want to work. The other thing, too, that's interesting in the way the climate is right now in the job market, if somebody wanted to try to do something a little different, now's the time to do it. They're looking for warm bodies to walk through the door. So if somebody, ever had an inclination to get into manufacturing or whatever industry it might be, and they're doing something different, now's a great time to do it.
Yeah, I would agree. I was actually in Chicago yesterday and through an industrial park. If I passed 20 places, I'm going to bet at least a third of them had help wanted signs out. Mm-hmm. And it's no different here in Indy or anywhere else in Indiana, I guess, for that matter.
Right.
Outside of the employment piece, what else is a key topic these days?
Again, like I said, workforce is number one. Number two is probably healthcare cost. If you look at, you've probably seen all the studies that have been out recently about hospital cost in Indiana. I think we're number 5 or 6 in the country as far as the highest hospital cost.
Okay.
Which is, certainly a detriment for employers. Number one, just on the cost of it. Mm-hmm. But then, other manufacturers or other businesses in general that might be headquartered out of state that are looking to add another plant or whatever it might be in Indiana. We've heard some horror stories about that on internal documents it has the letters ABI, which stands for Anywhere But Indiana.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah.
I've not heard that.
Yeah.
That's interesting to hear. And the only reason why I say that is because you look at maybe some other, like the tech industry, we'll use as an example. When Salesforce bought ExactTarget, and this may not be a great correlation to the manufacturing industry, but it's a story nonetheless. They were excited about Indy just because, being headquartered in San Francisco, cost of living and cost of doing business in San Francisco is so astronomical. Right. They're like, hey, let's put butts in seats in Indy.
Yeah.
But I can also understand what factors work in the opposite direction, and clearly cost of healthcare is one of them.
Right. Yeah. That's You think about, relocating a business to Indiana. I mean, cost of living is great. Our economy's been really good.
Yep.
That healthcare cost piece of it is really kind of leading the way on the negative side.
For sure.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, as a small family-owned business in the manufacturing space, if you were to rank our expense line items from top to bottom or greatest to least, healthcare costs as the employer portion, let alone the employee portion, would certainly be towards the top.
Right.
It's a challenging environment, not only for from a pure business aspect on a P&L basis, but also when you look at going back to workforce, recruiting, retaining team members, and having to navigate the whole picture, let alone then some of those specific items like healthcare costs. That's
right.
It's a challenging situation.
Yeah, it's an issue that the IMAs governmental affairs team is working on. It's at the point where it's being addressed in the General Assembly. What comes out of that, kind of remains to be seen. But yeah. I think it's front and center on everyone's radar.
I want to backtrack real quick because one thing we skipped over. I called you coach in the beginning. Let's touch on that real quick. I'll let you tell the story. How did you? I know you've been involved with coaching various sports, at least from what I see firsthand is girls basketball. Right. What prompted that, and how long have you been doing that?
I've trying to think. I think I'm in my 18th year of coaching girls basketball. So, I had a friend of mine, real good friend of mine, who asked me to help him coach before our daughter was even born. So I kind of got started on the girls' side early. Mm-hmm. Our daughter's born. By the time she's in, second and third grade, I'm helping out with her teams. When she got to fourth grade, you get the call, right. Would you be willing to do this? Which I did, and no good deed goes unpunished, right? So year after year after year, you just kind of keep going. Yep. I love it though. It's honestly it's a passion of mine. Like I said, I've been doing it about 18 years now. The last 6 years over at Bishop Chittard. So mm-hmm. I was the head freshman girls coach for 4 years. This past year, moved up and was a assistant on the varsity team, and so I'll be heading into my second year with the varsity team this coming fall.
Yeah, I had a feeling it had something to do with maybe grade school days and with your own kids or somebody else's kids, and got talked into it and been hooked ever since.
Yeah, and it's funny too. I've had some opportunities to, go and coach some boys, and I'll never forget a conversation with my daughter when she was in fifth grade, and she probably doesn't even remember this day. They were having trouble finding head coaches for some of the girls' teams. Well, about that time too, the boys' teams are getting ready to start their tryouts. They go a little bit later than the girls, and a flood of parents walk in the door that are ready to coach the boys. And my daughter looked at me and she goes, you could see that quizzical look on her face, right? And she goes, well, you'll always coach the girls, won't you? So there you go. 18 years later, I'm still on the girls' side. Yeah.
Well, that's cool. All right, shifting gears back to the IMA conversation. Who's a typical member? And I'm sure there's probably different categories, whether it be a manufacturing member or a supplier member or something to that effect. Hmm. What does membership look like? And if someone, and why should someone be a part of it?
Sure. So we have, roughly 1,000 members in the state of Indiana right now. We have regular members, which are true manufacturers, and then we have associate members, which are, anybody that provides some sort of product or service to manufacturers. Could be a CPA firm, a software company, whatever that might be.
Coatings distributor.
A coatings distributor, absolutely. So that's kind of, just the overall look at the membership. What's interesting is a lot of people think that only the large companies belong to trade organizations. Right. And we do have, the Eli Lillys and the Hondas and the Toyotas and the Subarus as members. When you look at our manufacturing members, 80% of them are 250 employees and below.
Okay.
And 50% of them are 50 employees and below.
Really? Wow.
So there's a little bit of a misperception there on who belongs to a trade organization and who doesn't. And, the fact of the matter is it's the smaller manufacturers that
Right.
really need the resources that we provide
Sure.
and can lean on us for different things.
Right.
So that kind of just gives you a snapshot maybe of who our members are. In terms of why someone should belong to the IMA, there's a lot of different reasons that people join our organization. And, starting at the very top, we have, people that we call mission members. And they are manufacturers that, may have been members of the IMA for 50, 60 years. We've actually been around since 1901. We're the second oldest manufacturers association in the country. I think Illinois got us beat by 3-4 years, but
That doesn't count. They're barely a state.
they've got their own challenges going on over there for sure. But we have a large percentage that just buy into that mission. They want to strengthen the industry that provides for their livelihood. We have a whole nother group of people that really want the advocacy piece. They want to know what's going on at the State House, what's going to affect my business positively or negatively.
Right.
And they appreciate the fact that we are fighting on their behalf, for the betterment of the industry. Then we have other folks that will join strictly to get our communication pieces, just to kind of stay abreast of what's going on in the industry. We have some cost savings programs, whether it's, insurance, environmental waste disposal services, shipping programs, whatever it might be that are offered at discounts. That's something that's attractive to those people. And then, honestly, we have people that maybe currently were not members, but they have a specific issue that they're dealing with right now.
Okay.
Perfect example of that, just this past summer, 1st of June, I get a call from a company that they're actually based out of South Carolina. They have 7 plants around the country and happen to have a very large, about a 450,000 square foot facility down by Columbus. Well, they were getting energy curtailment notices from Duke Energy.
Okay.
And they got, I think it was 3 curtailment notices within a 2-week period. So, basically Duke wanted them to flip their switch off for a 2-hour period to kind of rebalance the grid. Well, the problem was if they flip that switch off, it takes them 48 hours to get back up to optimum production levels. So they declined these notices and got levied some pretty hefty fines. So they contacted us and said, "Hey, is this something you can help with?" Well, we have relationships with all the utilities. We actually have somebody from Duke Energy on our board.
Okay.
So they joined as a member, and I think it was in probably a week and a half's time, we had kind of brokered some conversations and some things that would work for them. So no more curtailment notices coming.
Right.
So we have people that have a specific issue sometimes that will come to us, for help too.
Sure. No, that makes sense. That's good. We'll get a little selfish here. For someone like Acessa, it's a distributor of coatings and other chemicals selling to manufacturers of varying sizes. What would make sense for us? I mean, what benefits do you foresee there being for someone like us?
Well, again, kind of on that overarching thing,
Yeah.
you want the industry to be strong and solid,
Sure.
right? Because that's who you're selling to. So that piece of it is certainly important. For you in particular, I think the networking piece of it would be huge. We have a variety of events, throughout the year, kind of let you mingle with the folks that you're selling to.
Right.
There's another piece of this that we offer. that we offer to all of our members, but just a small fraction actually take advantage of it. We allow our members to submit, once or twice a month, some type of informational article to us. So more of a content marketing type piece that kind of helps position them as the expert in their particular niche. The people that do that month after month have told me point blank, that's worth the price of their membership dues right there.
Sure.
Just from an exposure, and a branding standpoint.
Right.
So those would probably be the two or three biggest factors, I think, for somebody like yourself.
Yeah, for sure.
Gotcha.
And I do have a membership application in my briefcase
Yeah.
when we're done. So.
Yes,
Yeah,
naturally. That was a soft sell. Soft sell.
okay.
I appreciate that.
Look forward to it.
So you gave a specific example there where someone had an issue and they called on your group to help and ultimately brought everyone to the table to work through that. And then earlier you mentioned one of the goals of the IMA is to work on issues that manufacturers across all industries have. This specific example being workforce and workforce development, not just taking what's there and trying to elevate that, but more broadly speaking, grow the workforce so that from an employment standpoint, there's a wider and deeper pool, which we are feeling, as we mentioned, very, very strongly, painfully. Given the business climate today, which is wacky, which is a technical term, wacky, between supply chain issues, pricing issues, from inflationary pressures and just pure supply and demand, et cetera, what would you say the top three most pressing issues are, generally speaking, in the manufacturing environment in Indiana?
Outside of workforce and
if workforce is one of those three, then just kind of ranking them out.
Yeah, I mean, right now, if I had to go down the list, it would be probably workforce 1, supply chain issues 2, both, just availability of raw materials and cost of raw materials. As you guys know, lead times have, gotten so stretched out that it's getting crazy. Healthcare cost right on the heels of those. So I mean, those would really be the top three that we're looking at right now. There's other things, specific to manufacturers that our governmental affairs team addressed at the last General Assembly session, which is this business personal property tax issue. I mean, right now in Indiana, you look at the equipment that manufacturers purchase. I mean, it's millions and millions of dollars, for one machine. They can only depreciate that down to a 30% floor, and after that, all bets are off.
Right.
I mean, we're really at a competitive disadvantage when you look at the surrounding states. So that's something that our team is working on. At this year's session in the General Assembly, they chose not to really address that. It will be right back front and center next year, though, for sure.
It seems odd when you consider Indiana being such a strong part of its economy being manufacturing,
Right.
that would exist, that limitation.
I completely agree, and the fact that generally we are a very easy state to do business in. But again, when you talk about manufacturing, people that we touch that industry every day, right? Just like you guys do. A lot of people that don't really touch manufacturing don't really have a good concept of how important it is to our state. Right. And you look at the size of the state that Indiana is, we have a touch over 7,000 manufacturers in the state.
Okay.
And of that 7,000, the total output from those manufacturers is about $102 billion, which accounts for 28% of the state's gross domestic product. And then when you look at the employment side of it, about 17% of our total workforce is in manufacturing. And that number really isn't even a fair number, because the way the feds actually account for it, that just accounts for production type workers.
Right.
So if you work in HR or finance for a manufacturer, you're not counted in those numbers. So
it's well over 20% for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. State of manufacturing, we've kind of touched on indirectly a little bit. Things are very, very robust still, from what we've seen, and I assume that you're going to kind of back this up. The demand is still there. Now we're trying to figure out. I had 6 hours plus behind the wheel yesterday, so I got to listen to CNN for a long time, which is, I don't know if that's good or bad. But the conversation centered around manufacturing, or just the economy in general, is now you have this demand still built up. Is it being extended because supply can't keep up with it? So they're trying to figure out, for those who think a recession is looming versus those who don't, and then somewhere in the middle lies, okay, yeah, there's going to be a pullback, but when is it? And they're trying to project when they think that will be. And most folks were saying not in 2022, because there's still too much demand, and because the supply hasn't hit it yet, it's going to be stretched out easily. But is that 2023? Is it 2024? And of course, to what extent? Flip a coin. No one knows.
Yeah.
If you have that answer, that'd be great.
Yeah. I wish I had the crystal ball to pull that one out. I don't. I think you're exactly right, though. I mean, manufacturing, even through COVID, stayed very strong.
Yeah.
We had some manufacturers that, maybe they were really tied to the automotive industry. With the chip shortage and everything that was going on there, they certainly had a dip, but then it came back pretty quickly. Mm-hmm. I do think 2022. I don't think you're going to see that the pullback that you're talking about.
Right.
I was just at a very large manufacturer last week. They said they're about, I think they have 1,200 employees at this plant currently.
Okay.
And he said they're about 400 employees low on where they
Can you share what industry they're in?
The trailer industry. Yep.
Okay.
It's a trailer manufacturer.
So you said 1,200 employees?
They currently have 1,200.
And optimal is 1,600?
Correct.
I thought we had problems.
Yeah. And I asked him, I said, any idea where you're going to find those 400 employees? And, the arms went up. But he said with the current 1,200 employees they have right now, it will get them through with what's going on with the supply chain.
Yeah.
They'll be able to stay, at a good production level based on what their suppliers are able to supply to them.
Right.
Once that all gets rebalanced, then it's going to get real interesting for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. But to your question, Vince, I don't know when that pullback's going to be. I'm hoping it's one of those things everybody talks about and never quite materializes. But
it's possible.
You never know.
Right. There are a few people with that theory as well, or that it's really soft.
Yeah.
Things will right size somewhat, but yeah, you just took it right out of my mouth that having a soft landing
Right.
Would certainly be ideal.
Absolutely.
I think what's really interesting is when you look at the pricing pressures, and people are talking about a bubble, and I don't mean like a housing bubble, although that's also being talked about. But it's not like things are so much overbuilt because of shaky foundational aspects. It's a true economic supply and demand issue. And when you look at some of the other factors in the economy, nationally and here in the state, the unemployment rate is so low that the people that are employed, you have real wage growth. Yes, you have the cost of living increasing. That sort of comes with supply and demand in a booming economy, especially coming out of what I think a lot of people don't really pay attention to because it was so fast, was the economic reset that occurred in the depth of COVID was so deep, but yet so fast and narrow that as things came back up, it wasn't like the Great Recession of 2008 to 2010 or 2007 to 2009, kind of depending on when it hit you. Mm-hmm. That just seemed to be prolonged with a really slow, drawn out recovery. But that downfall at the depth of COVID was so quick and so sharp, but then the rebound was essentially a 180.
Right.
That net for net, things are up from pre-COVID, but they're not as bad as where they were when you say, okay, well, this time compared to a year ago or 2 years ago now, because good Lord, it's April 13th, and 2 years ago was when April was like the depth of COVID for us anyway, in terms of when things were really shut down or figuring out what coming back means. It'd just be really interesting to see for manufacturing in Indiana and where the end products go. So all these manufacturers making trailers, RVs, cars, durable goods, electronics, ultimately everything's in some way or another a consumer product or goes into a consumer product. Mm-hmm. What does that look like? And how do we, circling back to those top three issues, how do we address those? Not only through folks at the IMA and through the lobbying and legislative process, but as a business community, how does that get fixed?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question, and there's a lot of questions tied up in there for sure. I just read just a couple of weeks ago of another trailer manufacturer that they are 2 years out.
Wow.
Right now.
It's good.
So
in a way,
and it's good and bad.
There's
and
caveats. There's
exactly. What I'm really interested to see is with the chip shortage. Mm-hmm. The way not only automotive but everything else that involves chips. At what point do we really start seeing some positive gains in that sector? And I think that might give us that glimpse into when does the supply chain issue really kind of start to work itself out a little bit.
Right. There's been a lot of news on that. I mean, new plants being built or et cetera, but
right.
Of course, those don't just go up overnight. Those are a multi-year process.
Right.
Congrats to the Buckeyes on getting a nice deal there. Any chip manufacturers out there listening or watching, you want to come build in Indiana, contact the IMA. Hell, call us. We'll figure out who to put you in contact with. We'd love to have a couple of those plants in the Hoosier State for sure.
Absolutely.
You talking about potato chips?
Well, yeah.
Or tortilla chips? Call me for tortilla chips and potato chips. Call him for, processing chips, computer related.
Yeah. Didn't it one time, I should know this before I speak, but I don't think he's CEO anymore. The former CEO, I think it was Cisco, was an IU grad, but Cisco they don't make chips anyway, so I don't know where I was going with that.
Cisco, didn't he sing the thong song?
Wrong Cisco.
Oh, I thought you meant the rapper.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Any questions you have for us?
No, I wish you guys had the crystal ball that could look into the supply chain and all this stuff too, dude.
If I had the crystal ball, it would be spitting out the winning Powerball numbers for tonight. And
you'd show up to work tomorrow, right?
Yeah, I would.
And the next day?
Not some.
And
I don't know.
The next day?
I don't know about
and the day after that,
but I'll be there tomorrow with the Bloody Mary bar.
That'd be kind of fun.
Yeah.
He wants to put in his 2 weeks notice face to face, right? He's not going to mail it in.
Uh-huh.
So.
Sure. Yeah. I would give a month ish.
No comment.
Yeah. All right. Well, hey, if you're listening in for wherever you get your podcast, thanks for tuning into this episode. For those viewing on YouTube, thank you. YouTubers, if you have not subscribed to the channel, please smash that subscribe button. Click the little bell icon for notifications. We thank you guys for joining us on this episode of the Industrious Podcast. And don't forget, be industrious.
See ya.